Welcome to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet with Ryan Poterack from Poterack Capital Advisory. You have unique values, objectives, fears, life experiences, and biases. Any financial professional who ignores or minimizes the importance of your story may not be able to help you achieve your ideal outcomes or hit your goals. It's time to experience the PCA difference. In this podcast, we help business executives, soon-to-be retirees, and solutions-based individuals overcome the anxiety leading up to their upcoming years. We do this by initiating in-depth discussions about the financial aspects of retirement, like tax planning and asset allocation, alongside, and often overlooked, personal and lifestyle aspects. Join us for this journey where we explore retirement from a contrarian point of view, as Ryan draws from years of experience and qualified guest professionals to help you explore the true purpose of your money in retirement and the impact you want to make in your golden years. Ryan Poterack and Alec Quaid offer investment advice through Private Advisor Group, which is a federally registered investment advisor. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Private Advisor Group and Poterack Capital Advisory are separate entities. This information is not intended to be a substitute for individualized legal or tax advice. Please consult your legal or tax advisor regarding your specific situation.
Hey, Charisse, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing wonderful. Are you ready for another episode of Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet?
I am so ready. So ready.
I was counting on it. So what are we
if
going
I
to talk
said
about
no?
today? I guess introducing everybody, Ryan Poterack, Poterack Capital Advisory, Charisse McQuarrie, just general brilliant person, also a client of ours. Charisse, what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about the impact of our financial influences, including where we learned first our financial awareness. Where did we get that in the beginning? Maybe it came from an advisor, but most likely it did not. Am I right?
Well, I think a lot of things come from our parents.
Yeah.
And that's the initial influence. And I think when we're young, we tend to think about the present more than the future. And financial planning in all of its forms is really about the future. Even saving money, if you think about saving and investing money, it's a choice to live beneath your means today to set aside money for tomorrow. Not an easy thing to do for an 18-year-old or 25-year-old or 35 or 40-year-old sometimes. Who brings that discipline in? It depends. I have found that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If parents were savers, financially successful, maybe even in how parents spent that money on experiences that kind of expand a young mind as to the possibilities beyond the city that they grew up in. I think that's the biggest influence. I talked to so many people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond, and their fears and biases are rooted in their youth. And so I don't know who said it to me, but it's kind of stuck with me is we spend most of our lives trying to fix how our parents screwed us up or something like that. And it's tongue in cheek. It's tongue in cheek, but I see it all the time.
Yeah, my mom and dad were not savers. Then they divorced, and mom had to work 2 or 3 jobs just to raise us 4 kids. So we grew up poor, basically. And what I got from that is I don't want to be poor. So when I got married and we started a family, our very first financial decision was to get some life insurance. So we met with a life insurance agent, which I felt very proud and responsible for doing because my parents had never done anything quite like that. And Mike's parents, maybe a little less irresponsible than mine, but not much. And so I know some people would take that upbringing and say, okay, so I'm just going to do what my parents did. Or some people like me will say, I want to do better than my parents did. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that we don't know what we don't know. And some of the likely responsible decisions, like, okay, we have kids and we have debts, maybe we should get life insurance because I realize that some people die when they didn't expect to die. But if you don't have a model, if you don't have, somebody that models that behavior, it's difficult to just make the choice on your own. It's one thing to say, well, I don't want to be poor like my parents. Okay, now what?
Yeah, right.
I mean, what do you do? And so one thing that's been true my entire career and well before it in this industry, it is exceedingly rare that an individual or a couple seeks out a financial professional. So typically, if we're talking about, relationship potentially with advisors, typically it was the advisor in some way that initiated the contact in some way. Even in your situation, not knowing, I wouldn't think that you picked up the phone one day and called the life insurance agent.
No, we got called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably, okay, they'd have some information, saw you had some babies and said, well, okay, the circumstances are ripe here for a life insurance sale versus being 63 and retired.
Right.
So people do not seek out the financial planning. I think some of it can be intimidating. Some of that is born from the history of the industry being sales oriented, commission oriented. It's slowly evolved away from that. I mean, we're fiduciaries. There's no commission for any particular product or strategy. We're 100% fee based. But 20 years ago, commission was the norm, and there you got a conflict of interest. You got some tension,
Yep.
potentially, that makes it uncomfortable. But also, I don't think any of us are comfortable talking about stuff we don't understand.
Right.
So yeah, you decide, I don't want to be poor like mom and dad. Now what? So there's a
Yeah,
whole ocean of not knowing what you don't know.
And then you turn to the people you hang out with because that's the influencers that you have around
Absolutely.
you.
Yep.
And what happens then?
Well, you talk to friends, family. Now, if your parents don't have a lot of money, maybe your siblings don't have a lot of money. They might not be the best, but talk to people at work. You talk to people that you know and trust. Now, their situation on the details could be radically different than yours. So this has always been, and I would say always will be, AI isn't going to take over this element. It's always been a relationship business. It's always been relationship and trust. If you think about what we offer the public, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't test drive it, you can't put it on and look in the mirror. It is totally intangible. And so what I have or what other financial professionals have, they either have the trust of the client, or if the person's not yet the client, they have the hurdle of engendering trust. Without trust and without somebody I'm talking to becoming comfortable with me and my team, it doesn't matter how much I know. It just doesn't. And so for decades, you probably heard it a while ago, but if you take a financial person who's absolutely brilliant, the most brilliant technical mind you can imagine in the financial industry, but they don't know how to communicate, they don't know how to connect with people, they will fail. If you take the person on the other end of the spectrum, maybe not the sharpest knife in the block, but everybody loves him or her. Just they're a magnet. They're just interesting people. They're honest and truthful, and just people want to be around that type of person. That person, but maybe they don't know as much financial. That person has a real chance to succeed, because the technical stuff you can get, you can gain. Now maybe the genius partners with the person who's real good at attracting people, and as a team they would work out. But I think that's where consumers sort to thinking that our knowledge in the financial area somehow gives us the superpower to pick stocks and pick investments and see the future, and it's not the case. So it's always been a relationship and a trust environment. So typically that first advisor comes through somebody that you know, and then you get the actual experience of working with that individual, and then that reveals, are they what you hope they were in the beginning? And sometimes that works out and it's wonderful, and a few times or more it doesn't work out.
What age is appropriate to start that process? Say you're married with a couple kids, both working. What?
I look at it as, when should you start going to the doctor? If you're a healthy person and you're, in your teens or 20s, and you want to get out in front of that and be proactive and wellness and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's never too early to work with a financial professional, because you'll learn. Now, there's a challenge is that for an advisor with my level of expertise and experience and limited time, unless they're a son or daughter, grandson, granddaughter of a client, they can't afford me maybe as a young couple married in their 20s. It doesn't work. I could be a lot of help to them, but I have a finite amount of time. So if you tend to work with an advisor oftentimes that is maybe of similar age if you're starting out in your 20s and 30s.
Right.
One of the great things about many great things in the internet is there's a ton of information. Our listening audience has access to more information at a couple of clicks than I had starting out in this industry over 3 decades ago. That comes with a challenge with the internet is it's such an ocean, you may not be able to discern between, this is some really interesting concepts, and BS. So, but there are so many opportunities to learn. I guess that's how I would put it out there, is absolutely in a pure sense, working with a financial professional early and often is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, because otherwise, like in my case, to your point earlier, I knew I wanted to do better, but I didn't know how.
Yeah.
And I didn't reach out as early as I could have because I was a young mom with 2 crazy children, and you think you don't have time, and
Right.
and you don't. I mean, there's some truth in that, but the point is, I got information from my coworkers, as you said, and reading books and striving to do better, but I made a lot of mistakes with money in my life, and I'm sure you see a lot of that in your work as people
I made
wise
mistakes
like
myself,
me.
and it's never in the top 10 on your to-do list, especially as you said, you have 2, I'll say not so crazy children, but you have a lot going on. It's a challenge, and again, people don't pick up the phone and call. And I want to back up a bit, just to be clear, is for our clients that are in the PCA family, I am honored, and all day long I'll work with their kids and grandkids of any age. When we bring on a family, we bring on the whole family. It's important from a relationship standpoint to do that. So that's a whole different thing. And as an attorney, it might be me doing work pro bono, but it makes sense. And the last I checked, when parents are wealthy, it's the kids that inherit it. So you want to bridge that relationship from a business standpoint too.
Right. And also their parents are going to want them to work with you because they've seen what you've done. So you probably get you get parents like me badgering their kids to call you.
Yeah. Which is having good intent, but as we all know, are generally as parents, the more we badger, the less likely that
it does not work. I don't recommend it. That doesn't stop me from doing it, but it does
builds
not
up
work.
a callus. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's mom again. She knows best.
Youth is wasted on the young, Cherise.
I know. It totally is. So what if somebody has no role models? What if they completely wing it? What damage can occur from that?
Well, if they have no role models, I would wonder or question how do they even conceive of seeking somebody like me out, uh, where maybe in the workplace. So at a lot of careers versus jobs, generally speaking, they might be able to participate in a 401k oftentimes after they've been at the company for a year. I think for young people, that can be their first taste of, oh, okay, and maybe the company goes an extra step, brings somebody in from time to time to kind of like educate. Well, what is the 401k? The easiest or the surest way, the surest path to wealth is the discipline to save, not what you invest in. And so if you think of a 401k, payroll deduct. You sign a form, they take X number of dollars out of your paycheck before you even see it in the net paycheck, and it starts building. And then you have options. So I think that's for many people, for many young people, that might be their introduction to our industry. They might not necessarily understand it. They have parents, coworkers, that will say, wow, 401k is great. The company might offer a match. Hey, you save $100. Company adds $100. How can you beat that? However, for the young person, they have to realize, well, they can't spend that extra $100. There's a vesting schedule. There's pre-59.5 penalties. But that's probably for young people that have no model or anything, the gateway to financial planning.
So do you, that brings to mind this question of grandkids. So obviously young grandkids like mine who are 6.5 and 4, they get money from us. They get money from their other grandparents. They don't really understand the value of money, but they know it's kind of cool. And
right.
They don't dislike it, but at the same time, I want them to learn the idea of compound interest because I did not learn that when I was a kid. So I want to do better, right? And my kids kind of know it, but they don't practice it as well as I'd like. And I am interested in like financial literacy for school-age kids. What do you do about that? What's your advice there?
Well, when I was of that age, they had, which you'll likely remember, they had passbook savings accounts.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was kind of tangible. So to a child who might not understand concepts, that was tactile. And it's like go in there and say, okay, I deposited $15 whenever.
Handwritten in the book.
Yeah, and now it's $15.60 or something like that. Well, where did the 60 cents come from? Could be a part of it. For some families and parents, buying stock in familiar names. Okay, you own a share of Disney, or those Amazon packages that are out front at the doorstep more days than not. You own a share of Amazon. So things like that, where to the child there can be a benefit, irrespective of where those individual stock names work out or not. That starts to imprint on them. Oh, okay, I can actually be a partial owner in these company names that I see on my toys, or we stop in at the gas station to fill up when we're on a vacation, and it's Shell or whatever it might be. So those are and you can frame a conversation around that with the child. But again, everybody's busy. The child wants to, I think of my 12-year-old Lincoln, he wants to be gaming on Fortnite and do all that kind of stuff. And I have stuff I want to do. So it takes effort to do that. But just having conversations around it, that's the value, irrespective of whether the stock goes up or down.
That's a good idea, the Disney idea. Can't get my kids off Go to get the compound interest account set up, so maybe I'll just buy some Disney for them.
Maybe.
I mean,
Yeah.
the whole idea is really just so that they can experience the growth of that money rather than, oh, I got another Lego set that I do not need,
Yeah.
which, is bad for the earth. And also they don't play with it. It gets stuck in a closet.
And you touched on it earlier. I mean, as young people, we don't always want to listen to our parents. So between Dawn and I mean, we have 7 children from 12 to 38. And so, well, no, now 6 out of the 7 are 21 years old or older. None of them ask me questions about financial planning.
You don't know anything.
None of them say, hey, Dad, thinking about getting a vehicle. What do you know about buying versus leasing? Hey, we're thinking about financing a house.
Wow.
These different kinds of, none of them.
That's surprising to me. But you are chopped liver to them, so I get it.
Yeah, it's disappointing to me, but then my pragmatism kicks in, Charisse. It's okay, so what do I really do? Do I, when we as individuals seek something out, it's going to mean more to us than if somebody's just handing it to us on a silver platter.
Yep.
So yeah, the wife of one of our children has sought me out. She has her own business. She's a freelance photographer. She's really talented, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I find that very, very curious. And my 21-year-old daughter, Reagan, who she did ask me to if I would file her tax return last year. So I went through that. So it's a baby step.
Baby steps. Well, they're lucky to have a guy like you in their life. They just don't know it.
That's what I think, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. And my kids, same for my kids.
Yeah.
They just don't know. Someday they'll know, maybe.
And what Dawn and I are doing, we do save money regularly for our grandchildren. We've got 4. They're not aware of it. The grandchildren don't live close to us, so it's infrequent conversations. And when we do have them, we want it to be all about goofiness and fun. But someday, when they have some real money, there's a conversation there.
Well, right. And you're role modeling anyway, as we are for our kids. I think the idea of financial literacy, and some of us have our heads in the sand more often than we should, no present company accepted. But I think just having means and being able to provide experiences for our kids and our grandkids, I think that's a good way just to model financial literacy. Yeah.
I mean, it's self-evident that we've been blessed to have financial success, for sure, which leads me in a thought, Charisse, to many people presume because somebody is financially successful, they know a lot about financial areas. I just happen to be an expert in that area, so that marries up. But, oh my goodness, wealthy doctors and such, that's when it's, when you make mistakes and you're wealthy, in dollars and cents, that's big. So there's a lot of wealthy people that, because of their wealth and because of their intellectual brilliance, overestimate what they know in other areas for which they do.
And their ego? Yeah.
Ego? Again.
Ego much?
That men's ego particularly.
Yeah. Well, you would just assume that a doctor would know a lot about money.
Yep. And I guess you'd assume I'd know a lot about brain surgery too.
Right. I wish.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Anything else that you want to add to this conversation before we wrap up?
Well, I don't know. This is somewhat related. So for the first time, I guess ever, so we had 5 of our 7 children together at Thanksgiving. We rented a big house on the coast in South Carolina, and it was awesome. We had them come in, and we had our 4 grandchildren there. But we had a family discussion about estate planning. And I always encourage this. So this is, in my world, definitely related to financial planning, but for our listeners, obviously not directly connected to how you invest. But we do comprehensive holistic planning. And I've told countless clients and families that we serve to have that conversation, because when it's relevant, i.e. when you're dead, you're not going to be there to clear anything up.
Right.
And at the same time, our children, adult children, they're very reticent to bring up the topic because they don't want to appear that they're waiting for you to die and get at the money, and it's awkward.
Or talk about your death at all.
But I decided I'm going to go there, and I did. So we gave an outline, a framework of, and particularly when I mentioned 7 children. Dawn has 3 from a prior marriage. I have 2 from a prior marriage, and then Dawn and I have Reagan, who's 21, and Lincoln, who is 12. So that adds complexity. And so we're just talking about kind of if I die, or if Dawn dies, what happens when both of us die? And just getting into that. And we entered into it in a way, trying to keep it light as well, as I always seek if I can get some humor, but it did bring about some questions and such. And because I had to tell him, hey, if, Dawn and I die, my brother Brad's in charge. We've got a trust, specific instructions, but he's the one I trust to carry out that. I trust to carry out the trust. Also, with our firm, because I pay one of our partners, wealth.com, is for our clients and relatives of our clients, and I was conveying this to our kids. I said, hey, if you don't have a will or a trust or a healthcare power of attorney, you can get one at no cost through our firm. It's an interactive process. Of course, if there's questions, if anybody needs hand-holding, my team will help, because I know that we have kids who have kids, and there is no legal document. I mean, it's one thing to not have a will when it's just you or just you and your spouse. You start adding kids to the mix and other things.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a plan, Charisse. Either the government, if they don't have a plan, it's the government's plan.
Yep.
And that can vary greatly even from state to state. So I just would say that we had the courage to have that conversation, and I'm glad we did. So I would leave our audience with that.
Yeah, that's not something that's easy to do, but
I was surprised about how nervous I was.
Yeah.
I've had the conversation hundreds of times.
Yeah.
With other families.
But it's personal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Who wants to contemplate their death?
Yeah.
We tried to have some fun with it.
Yeah, especially with mixed family, like you,
Yep.
his, hers, and theirs. That makes it even more tricky.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, good job.
Thanks. Do I get a gold star?
You do. A gold star
Nice.
right in the middle of your forehead. Yeah.
Yep. And a cherry on top.
Yeah. So what if people want to get all those benefits you just talked about? How do they get with you?
Well, first of all, can go out to our website, www.poterack.net. That's Poterack. A lot of information on the website, a lot of prior podcasts, blogs and the such. So that gives people a sense. They can listen to those. They can get a sense of who we are as a firm. We're completely independent. We're fiduciaries, 100% fee-based. Anna Hopkins has worked with me for over 17 years. She's the, what did they call that? The gatekeeper. Yeah. So if you want to get acquainted with me and my team, get a hold of Anna Hopkins. The information's on the website as well. We schedule a 30-minute Zoom to get acquainted, that sort of thing. We're also out there on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So there's a lot of ways to get a sense of who we are, why we're different, and then we can just have a conversation around that and see if it makes any sense for you and I to move forward.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charisse. Until next time, take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show or get a copy of Making It Count, Life Isn't Lived on a Spreadsheet by Ryan Poterack, visit www.poterack.net or give us a call at 704-366-5776. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Poterack Capital Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Poterack Capital Advisory does not offer legal or tax advice. Please consult the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstances. Nothing contained herein is to be considered a solicitation, research material, an investment recommendation, or advice of any kind. The information contained herein may contain information that is subject to change without notice. Any investments or strategies referenced herein do not take into account the investment objectives, financial situation, or particular needs of any specific person.
Product sustainability must be independently determined for each individual investor. Poterack Capital Advisory explicitly disclaims any responsibility for product suitability or suitability determinations related to individual investors.